Foundation CSR Technology Award 2003, etc. He have awarded many, but there are few I explain here. He was invited as a visiting scientist, ESPCI, Paris, GE Corporate Research and Development, Moscone, New York, USA. Visiting professor, Institute of Charles Grad, Mackler and University of Bob, France. Dr. Wadgaonkar has served as a member of board of studies of several universities in Maharashtra. Dr. Wadgaonkar sir was consultant to industry, which include Johns F. Welch Technology Center, USA, and his branch Bangalore, ABR Organic Limited, Hyderabad. To name are there are many names, but few I here explain. Dr. Wadgaonkar has, to his credit, 220 publication and more than that. He have international 24 and national 2 patents. 24 students completed PhD under his guidance. He is a member of exciting scientist group of the Science Outreach Program. Dr. Wadgaonkar sir has kept interest in providing quality education and promote rural youth to take a career in science, research and technology, innovation, thus contribution to building the science and technology ecosystem in India. Actually, the CV of Wadgaonkar sir is huge, but I shortly explain here. So thank you so much, sir. Stage is yours.
Thank you, Professor Vijay Kosti, and good evening to everyone. It's indeed a privilege and honor for me to be part of this symposium, which has been organized by Principal DP Bhosle College, Koregaon. I would like to compliment and congratulate the organizers in the first place for choosing a very pertinent and relevant theme, that is emerging trends in material science, and wherein both Department of Chemistry and Department of Physics, they have taken part in organizing this symposium. Of course, I had a fortune of listening to the presentation by Dr. Nanasaheb Thorat. Of course, I have been hearing about him, but this was the first time I got to listen to his presentation. Of course, he has been making waves, meaning, he is well-known personality in the field of research and technology. And of course, he is someone whom I consider as the poster boy of Shivaji University. He has gone to places, of course, it was an absolute pleasure for me to listen to his presentation. The quality of science, what he has done, and the technology, what he has developed, it's really commendable and, highly appreciative. And I think the message is loud and clear. Vijay, I just want to tell you that, you have made a very good choice of inviting, people like Dr. Nanasaheb Thorat to interact with the, participants here. And I am sure the participants are all enthused and energized, motivated and inspired, by listening to such kind of presentation. So my again congratulations and compliments to you and your colleagues for organizing such a symposium. And thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to share some of my thoughts. Okay, I want to keep this presentation very simple, because what I have been given to understand is that there are such teachers who are in the audience. We are doing in our laboratory at CSR National Chemical Laboratory, but I would like focus more on giving some of the ideas or what's happening around us. And for that, actually, I have chosen the theme rethinking resources and recycling of plastics. Friends, as you know, we all live in the world of materials. We need materials. they be natural materials or semi-synthetic materials or advanced materials. And just to tell you the importance of materials in our life, in fact, if you look at the human civilization, the human civilizations have been transferred from, Stone Age to Bronze Age to Steel Age to age of plastics. And now what we are talking about is the age of nanomaterials. And what is important to, appreciate and understand is all these eras, in the human civilizations are known by the materials which dominated that, particular era. Like earlier, it was stone. That's what, which was available to the human being. So they made use of the stones or natural materials which were available to them. And as the, science and technology progressed, humans discovered or invented several new materials. Okay. And this is, the point is here, the materials dominate the world, and it's very difficult to imagine the modern world without materials. Okay. And what scientists and technologists are trying to do now is to develop advanced materials or materials, smart materials. It's not just only to prepare a new molecule or a new material, but material with purpose, or the, chemicals with purpose, meaning they do some function. And I think it was on the display in the presentation made by Dr. Nanasaheb Thorat. And I am sure also previous speaker must have emphasized, the importance of materials in the modern world. And in today's presentation, I'm going to talk about one such material. Of course, plastic is also an important material. Of course, many times, common people associate plastics with carry bag, but that's not, complete truth, because plastics are also advanced materials or smart materials. And in fact, it's very, very difficult. Could have given a separate talk on, importance of plastics on our day-to-day life, and also in the modern technological era. But, just suffice to say, it's very difficult to imagine modern world without the use of plastics. Okay. But now the time has come, where we need to rethink about how do we derive these plastics, and what you do after their intended use is over. I think these are the two crucial, topics which I think, the scientists and technologies of today and tomorrow have to deal with. Okay. And that's why I have chosen this theme of rethinking the resources and recycling of plastics. So what I'm going to do in the next 45 minutes or so is to, of course, tell you the, importance of plastics. And like I said, we call it as the age of plastics. Of course, people have this, tendency to name this age, like age of nanomaterials or age of electronics or, age of computers. But, we can refer to, it's not an exaggeration if I refer to this as age of plastics, because we see plastics all around us. Okay. Now, as a scientist, we have to seek the truth, because science is all about, the facts and figures. And this is again, not a sales talk. So I will talk about what good plastics have done to us. And also, some of the things which are not so good or which don't look good, like ugly. So I am going to tell you the other side of the coin, about the plastics. And then, in response to this bad or ugly aspects of dealing with plastics, what the scientists, and technologists are trying to do to make these plastics environmentally friendly or safer, and that's where these two important themes are important to consider, that is the resource utilization and waste minimization. Okay. Because as you know, the plastics are, of the exterior or the plastics industry today is basically a petrochemical industry. Okay. Because if you, go back and see where the plastic comes from, the plastics which we use in our day-to-day life, they all come from petrochemicals. And friends, as you know, these are non-renewable resources. Okay. Meaning there are only finite stocks of, petrochemicals. And of course, the costs are escalating. And when the intended use of a plastic is over, it finally turns into carbon dioxide. And as you know, everybody is talking about nowadays the climate change or increase in the temperature of the Earth's surface. Okay. And now this is not a point of debate or discussion, but it's a reality. And something needs to be done urgently, to stop the emissions of carbon dioxide, or not allow the carbon dioxide to increase beyond certain level. Okay. And that's I think the most, it's called as a grand challenge in front of the scientists and technologies. So how do we, make plastics or materials, but not contribute to, the climate change? I think these are the kind of grand challenges which scientists are tackling with. And that's where the importance of, greener or safer polymer comes into. So I think we need to find out the alternate resources, meaning the raw materials from which the polymers will come. And how do we recycle the polymers? Put them back into use or convert them into other useful chemicals. So I'm going to, my presentation will be, basically dealing with these two aspects. Okay. And then in our laboratory, we are making use of the renewable resource material, which is agricultural waste products, and these are actually bio-based, these are renewable resources. And I will give you a glimpse of, some of the work which we are carrying out in our laboratory to make use of agricultural waste products as the source of monomer. Okay. And I will end my talk with some, concluding remarks. That's the food for thought for the, participants. So I told you, first I will talk about the age of plastics, and I already made a mention that it's very difficult to imagine modern world without the use of plastics. And here is an interesting data which I want to share with you. Of course, everybody wants to live longer. Okay, nobody wants to die tomorrow, and all of us want to lead a comfortable life. And you can see, in the Bronze Age or in the Iron Age, the life expectancy was hardly 26 years. Okay. But in the today's modern world, the life expectancy has increased to the 70 years. People live longer and people lead comfortable life. And there is a very interesting, fact that when the plastics were introduced, the synthetic polymers, the first synthetic polymer was made in 1907, okay, the bakelite resin. And as you can see, the graph, it goes up, from 1907. So there is definitely a relation between the life expectancy and the emergence of, polymers as materials. And of course, I'm going to tell you, polymers are not used only in day-to-day items, but also used in biomedical applications. That's why I think one of the contributing factors, I don't say that, plastics have only contributed to the life expectancy, but one of the major factors the life expectancy has gone up is because of the use of polymers in the day-to-day life. Okay. This is another slide, and I always believe that picture speaks better than 1,000 words. So you can see for yourself, where all polymers are used. Of course, the polymers is basically a prime example of science employed in the service of humanity. And this is a huge, huge industry. Okay, like world, of course, this is an old number, but world produces more than 350 million tons of plastics every year. So you can imagine, the magnitude or the of this industry. Okay. And of course, these are some basic definitions. But you can see plastics are used from bucket to rocket. Okay. And the most, impressive innovation or discovery which has happened in the field of science and technology is the man putting his foot on the moon. Neil Armstrong put his foot on the moon. That would not have been possible, if there were no polymeric materials. Okay. So this is the importance of, polymers, and polymers are used in, medical applications, etc. Now, talking about the COVID pandemic, and I think that's where, before COVID pandemic, let me tell you that the Indian government had put a ban on the use of plastics. Okay. But COVID pandemic, we could deal with, humanity could deal with COVID pandemic 19 before the, before this vaccine. What was the solution to fight or to deal with COVID pandemic was the use of these plastics. Okay. Be it the apron or the gown or, all those, items which were made use of, and you can see in surgical masks, face shields, gowns, surgical suits, and medical gloves, and the plastics used, even in the ventilators, they're all made up of plastics. Okay. So this is what the importance of plastic, and I'm sure all of you can appreciate, the use of plastics. So it's very, very difficult to imagine modern world without the use of plastics. I think this suffice to say this example. Okay. Now, again, I would like to give you a little bit of historical facts just to impress upon especially the student community. What are those 5 most important inventions which have happened in the era of chemistry? Okay, and the first and the foremost is, of course, the synthesis of ammonia. Because why it is important? Because ammonia is the basis of fertilizer industry, and fertilizer industry is the basis of food security. Okay, then comes penicillin, polyethylene, contraceptive pills, and then the liquid crystal displays. Which make the quality of this picture. I'm able to speak to you, and you can see each other. It's possible because of this liquid crystal display. Displays which make the quality of the picture really clear. Okay. And of course, contraceptive pills for the population control, and then penicillin. All these are very important inventions that has enabled the modern world. And you can see the polyethylene or the polymer figures into this. Okay, and I would like to quote here, Lord Alexander Todd, who was a Nobel laureate in 1957 for his work on polypeptides. Am I clear, Vijay? I think there is some echo. Looks like
Yes, sir. You are clear.
there is some
You are audible.
echo. No, some echo is coming. Maybe you can request other participant to mute.
Yes, sir.
So, what Lord Alexander said is that, he's inclined to think that the development of polymerization is perhaps the biggest thing that the chemistry has done, where it has the biggest effect on everyday life. I think with these examples, I'm sure, you are all convinced that, plastics is a very important class of materials. With this, let me switch the gear and tell you about some interesting historical facts about the plastics. Like I said, before science and technology came into existence, okay, what man used to use is to make use of the materials which are available to him or her from the nature. Okay, and here I have shown you the ornaments, or the buttons, etc., were made from ivory. Okay, and the ivory is actually obtained by killing elephants. Okay, now of course you have those natural materials from which you can make the products. Okay, or rubber or cellulose, but then you cannot completely depend on the natural materials. And imagine for the modern world, I mean the population what we have in the world today, it will be very difficult to meet their needs only based on the natural materials. Okay, and just to give you these 2 examples why the synthetic materials were invented or were discovered is to bring in those comforts in the life. And another, at the bottom, what I have shown is the discovery or invention of Bakelite resin. And Leo Baekeland set out to make an insulator, which is needed in the electrification industry. Imagine what insulator was used in the earlier days was by killing these bugs. The shellac was the insulator which was used in the earlier days. But again, imagine for modern world, how many bugs you will have to kill to obtain the shellac. And that's why this synthetic material, which was made by reaction of phenol and formaldehyde, years old, 115 years old, but it still finds thousands of application. Okay, so the message here is natural materials are important. They can meet certain needs of the human being, but we definitely need semi-synthetic or synthetic materials. Okay, next. Now, one may be wondering why these polymers are such important class of materials when you have so many other choices. Okay, but the friends, I just want to tell you, these are some of the attributes of polymeric materials or plastics which make them the preferred choice in the given application. And the first and foremost, of course, is the attractive cost and performance ratio. You can get higher performance at lower cost, and more importantly, they are lighter weight. They float on water. The density is lower. And that's why plastics components are used in automobile sector or in aircraft. Because they are lightweight. That way you can save the fuel. Okay. and they have high strength to weight ratio. In fact, some of the polymers are stronger than steel. Okay, they have excellent mechanical properties. They are resistant to chemical corrosion and weathering, unlike the metals, and they are easy to process. Meaning, you can convert them into the desired shapes and size by simple techniques like injection molding, calendering, etc. And they can be derived from oil, coal, gas, and of late, a lot of research is happening on making use of biomass. The agricultural waste product to obtain the raw materials which are needed to make the monomers, which are the basic building blocks of polymer. And more importantly, is one can vary the properties, over a wide range by chemical synthesis. In fact, they say that structure determines the properties of polymer. So by tuning the structure of polymer, you can vary the properties. You can have a soft plastic, you can have a hard plastic, etc. And of course, they have a high energy content similar to that of oil and superior to wood. So these are some of the attributes, which make the polymers or plastics as the preferred choice of material. Again, to end this part of my presentation, I would like to show you this picture. If you decide to ban the use of plastics, then probably we'll have to go back to the caveman lifestyle. Okay. Now the question I think which we all need to ask ourselves, whether you want to lead the life of like a caveman or the modern lifestyle. And of course, the answer I'm sure will be yes. Okay, because plastic will be used to meet the human needs. I think that's given. Okay, so the question is now, plastics are an important class of material. But now let's look at the other side of it. Okay, here I would like to show you some pictures, which I call them as the dirty pictures. Okay, now you can see when the intended use of a plastic is over, okay, which could be from say single use to maybe maximum 10 years. What happens to this plastic? It is dumped as a waste. Okay, again, to cut the long story short, I would like to give a simple example. There is so much of plastic which has been dumped into our oceans or water bodies that the Pacific Ocean is actually called as a plastic ocean. Okay, this is the kind of the problem which we are facing. Again, just to tell you another example, over 30 billion liters of bottled water is consumed. Okay, then what happens? This again becomes waste. In fact, they say that in fact, the day is not very far when this waste will bury us. As you know, the land is limited, the population is increasing, and if we start creating or generating waste at this magnitude, and just to remind you, the world produces 350 million tons of plastic every year, and this industry is growing at the rate of 10% per annum, and hardly 10% of the plastic is recycled. So imagine how much of waste is generated. Okay, that's why I say this problem is more important. Again, just to give you this another example, in fact, they say that by 2050, which is not very far, in another 25 years, the weight of plastic will be more than the weight of fish in the ocean. That's the kind of problem which we are facing. Then we are talking about microplastics, and of course, these microplastics enter into the fish, and then we finally end up into our bodies, because we eat fish as a food. So this is the kind of problem which we are facing. Okay, so this is about the problem which has been created by generation of the waste, and then of course many of the chemicals or polymers which have been introduced in the market previously, they are unsafe. Now this is one of the simple monomer. Of course, it's a darling monomer of polymer chemist, because a large number of polymers are based on bisphenol A. For the want of time, I will not get into the chemistry of it, but this is one of the monomer, which is widely used in making polymers such as like your araldite resin, like epoxy resin, polyesters, polycarbonates, vinyl ethers, unsaturated polyester resins, and lots of thermoplastic polymers. But it has been proven that now this bisphenol A is classified as an endocrine disruptor. Okay, and that's why its use is banned in children's bottles and cups in Canada. And it's cancerous tumors, birth defects, and other developmental disorders. So these are the kind of issues which have been created by making use of this bisphenol A. Okay. And of course, let me also tell you that there is no such thing as a safe chemical. Every chemical has some problem. Even if water is taken in excess, it can cause problem. Okay. So we have to make sure that chemicals which are used in making polymers are safe. I mean safer, not safe, but safer compared to this. And then of course, this is another example, like the PVC, which is a household name, polyvinyl chloride. If it is burned, what happens is you generate these kind of chlorinated dioxin chemicals. Okay, incineration can form dioxins and furans, and landfills can leach out the additives which are used in PVC. And then these are very very dangerous chemicals. The dioxins, chlorinated dioxins. Next. So these are the, that's why I told you some of the monomers which are used by polymer industry, they are unsafe. And then the fate of these polymers, when they are burnt or they are incinerated, they, generate those kind of products. So there is a lot of, environmental legislation, increase in environmental legislation, escalating cost of waste disposal, then decrease in image and trust, and increase in pressure from public and customers. But so that, like our relationship with plastics is like a love and hate relationship. I mean, these are the materials which we want them for those attributes which I already mentioned you, but then we hate them because they create the kind of problems which I already mentioned. Okay. So with this, what is the way forward for us? Okay, what is the way forward is to make the right decisions. Okay, and here I would like to quote Abdul Kalam. What he said is, how do we get experience by making wrong decisions? And maybe the earlier the community, polymer community, made some wrong decisions. Okay, but then how do they make right decisions? With experience. So in these last 100 years or so, I think we have gained enough experience now. So with this experience, we can make the right decisions. Okay, and we will definitely succeed. Okay, so this is what the way forward for us. And then some of the people who say ban the use of plastic. So my take on that is for those who want to put a blanket call, like put a ban on the plastic, is that it must be acknowledged that there are risks in taking risk. Okay, meaning we have to take some risk. In life there is nothing which is completely safe or completely risk free. And a total unwillingness to take risk will result in stagnation and lack of progress in important area of sustainability. That's why we need to take certain risks. Okay, and that's where the role of scientists and technologists comes into play. Because ideas are capital, rest is just money, and that's why we need talented or bright students who will have ideas to counter the problems which have been created. And the major two problems which I mentioned, of course, there are so many problems, but the two most important problems which I think the scientists and technologists will have to deal with is the resource utilization and the waste minimization. And that's where I think we need ideas. Okay, so we need people with imagination, because imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, imagination encircles the world. Okay? And the way forward is, again, for the one time, I will not get into that, all the details, but to make the polymers in a sustainable manner. Okay, I think that's the way, and then you can see here the targets are like zero waste, renewable materials, okay, eco innovation, renewable energy, eco design. Okay, all these are the terms which people are talking about. Now let's take a look at how you can make the polymer manufacturing in an environmentally friendly manner. Before that, let me tell you also the magnitude of problem or the kind of problems which polymer industry specifically and chemical industry in general is facing. Okay, just to look at these numbers. Chemicals and petrochemical sector, it's a huge industry. About 1388 million tons of fossil fuel derived materials were produced in the year 2020. Okay, and out of that 557.8 million tons of secondary reactants, and then 274 million tons of water per year. That's the kind of industry what we are talking about. Okay, next. Now the question, and I think this is something which I think all of us have to deal with, is we definitely need synthetic materials, but what are the issues which are caused by synthetic materials is excessive dependence on finite natural resources. Okay, I told you that, in the periodic table, there are only 118 elements. Okay. And as you know, elements cannot be produced in the laboratory, in the factory. Okay. Of course, they can be transformed, some radioactive elements, but these elements are stable. You cannot produce them in the laboratory. And what chemists do in the laboratory is make use of these elements and carry out reactions, on these elements and make the materials or make the products. And when we talk about these elements, I think carbon is the king of the elements. Okay. So lots of, carbon based products which we make use of. Okay. But then we have to remember that I told you, there are only limited resources of all of these chemicals. And of course, entire petrochemical industry is based on, coal, petroleum, and natural gas. The sources are limited. And in fact, scientists have predicted that by in another 100 to 300 years, there will be no petrol, there will be no natural gas, and there will be no coal. Okay. I think that's why we have to look for, other resources, moving from non-renewable resources to renewable resources. Okay. So the question is, and the material needs of man based on the concept of sustainability. I think that's what the most important question, which I think the present generation and the future generation will have to deal with. Now let's go back to Mother Nature and find out, how Mother Nature produces these chemicals. Like I said, Mother Nature is a great scientist, by the way, because even the polymers are also produced in the nature, Mother Nature, like cellulose, lignin. Cellulose is the most abundant polymer on the earth. Okay. You can see in Mother Nature produces 150 billion tons of polymers every year. And synthetic polymer industry, industry we produce, of course, this is an old number, but 350 million tons per year. Okay. But then you see in Mother Nature, there is absolutely no pollution. Okay. But in chemical industry, there is a lot of pollution because, there is no reaction which yields you to the products, desired products. There is always some byproducts which are formed. Okay. So in chemical reactions, there are many unintended byproducts. Okay. And chemicals created then sent out into the environment, the recycling is limited. Like plastic recycling is also limited. But in Mother Nature, the waste of one creature becomes a food for another creature. Okay. Like I'm going to show you in the next slide. There are recycling mechanism in place. That's why there is no pollution. Okay. Now, this is another slide which talks about the importance of green chemistry. I mean the environmentally friendly chemistry. This is there in the syllabus. I will not talk much about it. But one can use these 12 principles of green chemistry or apply the 12 principles of green chemistry to make the polymers environmentally safer or environmentally greener. And when we're talking about plastics or polymer, we have to consider the entire value chain. Like the raw materials are converted into monomers are converted into polymers, and then polymers are seldom used as they are made. They are converted into products, like a bucket or whatever, by some processing techniques. And there are lots of additives which are used in the polymer for properties. And then, of course, once the intended use is over, one has to worry about, or one has to think about the reuse and disposal. So in all of these stages, you can, apply the principles of green chemistry, which are listed here, those 12 principles of green chemistry. And of that, the 7th principle is the use of renewable feedstocks. And I'm going to spend little time talking about use of renewable feedstocks as the source of monomers. Of course, the work is happening, on all these fronts. Okay, how to prevent waste, how to, bring in atom economy or less hazardous synthesis, or design, benign chemicals, design for energy efficiency, reduce derivatization, design for degradation. Again, for the want of time, I will not be able to get into all those details. But these are the 12 principles, like 10 commandments, 12 principles of green chemistry. These are being made use of to make the polymers environmentally friendly. I just want to give you one simple example here. Again, from the this caprolactone, which is a monomer for making polycaprolactone, which finds a lot of application in biomedical field and other fields. But the conventional route to make caprolactone is from cyclohexanone, and one of the oxygen atom is inserted using metachlorobenzoic acid as the oxidant, and you can see 3-chlorobenzoic acid is formed as the byproduct. So this is only for getting one oxygen atom, so much of byproduct is produced. Okay, so this is not an atom economic reaction. Okay, now chemists and technologists are moving away from such kind of reactions which produce such a byproducts. Okay, and the route which is shown at the bottom, is the reaction of cyclohexanone with hydrogen peroxide as the oxidant. You get lactone, and water is the byproduct. And as you know, water is universal solvent, or it's a benign chemical. So these are the kind of processes. Again, this is not only a laboratory curiosity, but these are the kind of processes which industry has already adapted. Okay. Again, this is another example of production of adipic acid. As you know, the adipic acid is a monomer or building block for producing nylon 6,6, again, which is a household name. And the traditional route of making adipic acid is from benzene. Okay, it's a petrochemical source. Make phenol, cyclohexanone, and nitric acid oxidation to adipic acid. But you can see in this route, N2O is formed as the byproduct. This is actually a major contributor of the greenhouse gases. Okay, but Solotia, this is a company which has developed a route to recycle N2O. You can use this nitrogen N2O for hydroxylation reaction. So these are the kind of technologies which are being developed and practiced. Okay, it's another route for making polycarbonate. Like I told you, this phenol A is a very important monomer for producing engineering plastics. And the old process involves use of phosgene. Now, of course, I don't have to tell you about the accident which happened in Bhopal, in the Union Carbide plant, which is considered as the black day in the history of chemistry. Phosgene is very dangerous chemical. So people are trying to develop routes which without making use of phosgene. So you can make polycarbonate by transesterification route. So these are the kind of processes which are being developed. Use of stop the use of such kind of chemicals which are poisonous. Okay, so there I can give you several examples, but this is just to tell you how the chemists are and technologists are trying to develop routes. Okay, now talking more about this dependence on the fossil resources. Okay, this is a very important slide which is the basis of this entire presentation, which has captured the philosophy or the rationale of why to move from fossil resources to biomass. Now you can see fossil resources, it takes more than 10 raised to 16 years to form. Okay, it takes long time to form the fossil resources. Okay, 10 raised to 6 years to form the fossil resources. Again, it is formed from biomass. Okay, and what we do in the chemical industry is take these fossil resources, like I told you, natural gas, petrol, and coal, okay, and convert them into chemicals, fuels, and polymers. Okay, and what happens, to these polymers, chemicals, and fuel within a year, 1 to 10 years, finally they end up into carbon dioxide. Okay, so you see the material which had taken 10 raised to 6 years to form, we destroy them, or we can dig within 1 to 10 years. Okay, imagine the kind of problem here. Okay, and now, like I said, if the new coal or petrol or natural gas has to form, it will take more than 10 days to 6 years. Okay, and now this is actually burned into carbon dioxide within 1 to 10 years. Okay, so this is not sustainable. That's why it is called as a non-sustainable proposition. But then what happens? You see the plants take this carbon dioxide. Okay, and there is something called as carbon dioxide fixation, or the most interesting reaction that is called as photosynthesis. And these plants, take up this carbon dioxide, and in the presence of sunlight, okay, they fix this carbon dioxide and convert it into chemicals. Okay, like carbohydrates, cellulose, lignin. Basically, the source of all these products is carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight. Okay, so as long as sun will be there, and of course it has to rain, these agricultural products will be formed. Again, I want to bring to the attention of all the teachers and students here though the science and technology has made such tremendous progress, spectacular progress, but as of today, we entirely depend on plants or animals for the food. Food is not produced in the chemical industry. It is only processed. It is not, of course, there are some efforts to make, proteins from air or artificial meat in the laboratory. But I think as of today, the majority share of food comes from plants and animals. So we heavily depend on plants and animal for our survival, for our food. And the questions which now chemists and technologists are asking, can we also obtain the chemicals which are needed by uh, pharmaceutical industry or by polymer industry from biomass or bioorganisms? And that's where a lot of research is happening in the last 20-30 years. So we can take, of course, not to compete with the food chain, but in the agricultural industry, a lot of waste is produced. Okay, I'm going to give you in the second slide the amount of waste which is produced in agricultural industry. So can we take this biomass, agricultural waste product, and use some catalytic reactions or biotechnological reactions like enzyme catalyzed reactions, the way nature produces these polymers or chemicals, and convert them into chemicals, polymers, and fuels. So like these plants, they produce these produce annually. Okay, so there is a continuous source of these chemicals. So we don't have to wait for 10 days to 6 years to form those starting materials, but they are produced annually. Okay, that's why there is a lot of research which is happening on the use of agricultural waste product as the source of chemicals and monomers. Just to give you the numbers here, every year 10 raised to 13 billion tons of new biomass is produced worldwide. Okay, and cellulose has an estimated output of over 10 raised to 11 tons per year. You can see there are products, of course, none of this we eat except some proteins, like cellulosics, lignocellulose, natural fibers, polysaccharides, non-edible oils, so can we make use of this? And again, I think India is well positioned because India, the economy depends on agriculture, because our environment is conducive for agricultural production. So there are lots of, it's a rich biodiversity our country has. So can we make use of those, agricultural waste products, non-edible, oils, etc., fats, and make chemicals and products? So that's why there's a lot of work happening, on the utilization of these kind of, chemicals for making products which modern industry wants. So I think in this slide, what I have summarized is what are those drivers for renewable raw materials? Is of course, scarcity of fossil resources, and then of course, product differentiation. Like you can make some new materials which cannot be produced synthetically. Okay, and improved performance, and then renewable material, carbon footprint. Again, these are all terminologies which some of you may not be familiar with, but again, for the want of time, I will not be able to spend a lot of time. But I think what we are dealing with is we can save the environment. Okay, so at least we will not. There is a these are carbon neutral monomers, meaning you are not adding carbon dioxide into the environment. Unlike in petrochemical industry, what do we do? The carbon which is in the below beneath the earth, we are taking it out and converting into carbon dioxide, and that's how there is an increase in the level of carbon dioxide. But if we derive chemicals, from the products which are produced by plants and animals, there will be no excessive carbon dioxide which is emitted into the environment. Okay. Let's see what are those challenges, when we talk about moving from petrochemical industry to biorefinery, so-called. Okay. It's like a petroleum refinery, and there's a concept called biorefinery. Okay. What we do in petrochemical industry is to take this naphtha, crude, and make those chemicals like alkanes, alkenes, which are the basic building blocks. And here is one example of paraxylene to terephthalic acid, which is a monomer for polyester, PET. Now, here what we do in petrochemical industry is to introduce the functional groups into the monomer, But as against that, when we're talking about using agricultural waste product, these are overly functionalized. Like if you take example of cellulose, there are several number of OH groups, So what we need to do is to create chemicals based upon biomass is about selectively removing the functionality. Because, for monomers, you need either double bond or functional groups, like two functional groups. Okay, that's the kind of shift when we move from petrol industry to biorefinery. Then this is just not a laboratory capacity. There are several companies, who are putting in a lot of money in research and development efforts, and you can see all these big names here, like DuPont, DSM, BASF, all these companies are interested in biorenewable materials. Again, just to give another example, ethylene is the cheapest monomer which one can think of, and the entire polyethylene industry, polythene is produced from ethylene monomer, which comes from petrochemical resources. But you can see here, the same ethylene can be produced from ethanol, and which comes from molasses by fermentation process. Okay, and you can see there is a company called Braskem in Brazil. They manufacture polyethylene based on ethylene derived from molasses. Okay, and you can see this is a fixation of carbon dioxide, competitive in cost to fossil resource based ethanol, and of course lower capital footprint. Okay, so these are the kind of industries. There is another example of production of terephthalic acid from limonene. Okay, as you know, limonene is a terpene which is present in the citrus fruit. Okay, it's a waste product, so you can convert limonene into cymene, which can be oxidized to terephthalic acid. So this is where the creativity comes into picture. I showed you one slide where imagination is more important than knowledge. So of course you need to have knowledge, but you should also be creative and imaginative. So one can make use of these simple chemicals which are available as waste, and then use the knowledge of organic chemistry, what you learn in undergraduate college or in postgraduate college, and then develop these kind of routes to make the monomers. Okay, this is another example of a polyester, which has been produced by microbiological route, the 1,3-propanediol. This is a product under the trade name Sorona, which is useful in textiles, flooring, coatings. This is already commercially available from DuPont. This is something I wanted to bring your attention to. There's a Ricelan PA11. It's a polyamide. You all are familiar with nylon 6, nylon 6,6. And of course their origin is in benzene, in petrochemical. But you can get the diacid monomers which are required for polyamide from castor oil. And India is the largest producer of castor oil. Okay, it's a non-edible oil, and the process is already is in place to convert castor oil into 11-amino undecanoic acid. And then it can be polymerized to make polyamide. Under the trade name Ricelan. Okay, next. Then of course this is the most celebrated example of a polymer, which is a biodegradable polymer. People think it's a panacea, meaning it will solve all the problems. If you develop degradable polymers. But you can see lactic acid, which is again comes from plant sources, can be converted into polylactic acid. Okay, this is of course a well-known example of bio-based and not degradable, but it's a biocompostable polymer. Okay, so polymer chemists are trying to develop these kind of polymers as a replacement. Again, to summarize this section, what I would like to again emphasize the point is polymers are of course an indispensable part of modern life and are the most important class of materials today. Okay, now wide array of industries are made possible by use of polymeric materials. You think of electronic industry, and you only talk about electrical vehicles. Okay, you talk about all modern industries, they're all based on make use of polymers in some form or the other. Okay, the new polymeric materials and new processes for polymers will play crucial roles in solving the global challenges. And of course, as you know that sustainable development goals, those 17 goals, in many of those goals can be reached if you make use of the polymers in some way or the other. That's why I would like to conclude by saying that this section of the presentation by saying that the field of polymer science is wide open and it's very promising. Okay, you'll definitely need new polymers, but of course those polymers which are made in environmentally friendly manner, or keeping in mind the principles of green chemistry or sustainable chemistry. Okay, so the production of recyclable plastics, regardless of whether they are bio-based or fossil-based, represents a sustainable use of fossil and green carbon source. Okay, so the answer, again, this is a message which I wanted to convey. For many years to come, both petrochemistry and bio-based plastics will coexist and play a prominent role in the development of science and technology. Okay. In this section, I will not deal much about it. Plastic materials can be recycled. You can put them to use into, and that's where you can bring in innovation. Okay, you don't need a laboratory, like National Chemical Laboratory, to bring in this kind of innovations. Okay, next. This is one a shining example of Professor R. Vasudevan, who is a dean of College of Engineering in Madurai. He has made use of this plastic for constructing roads. This is how we can bring innovation and make some new products. This is an example of one Professor Alka Wadgaonkar, who has developed a technology for recycling plastic. You can depolymerize plastic, and Vijay knows. His supervisor in NCL is leading this program on degradation of plastics, okay, or recycling of plastics to fuel. Okay, now like I told they are made from petrochemicals, so they can be recycled back, converted into fuel. So that way you can achieve the circular concept of circular economy. That's what circular economy about. It's not like take, make, use and throw. That's called as a linear economy. And circular economy is like the waste is again put back to use. That's the concept. Like raw materials you design, production, distribution, the circular economy, because in the nature all the phenomena operate in a circular manner. Okay, not like us. In petrochemical industry we take, make and dispose model. So that's no more sustainable. So this is we are moving from chemistry of transformation, which is a linear model, to the chemistry of reuse. Okay, so from a chemistry of transformation to the chemistry of reuse, and this is the kind of message I think Vijay and his colleagues should actually convey to the students who are entering into going to be professionals. We cannot live in this world of linear economy, but it should be a concept of circular economy. Okay, so when are you buying a product? When somebody is buying a product, I think we should pay attention to this, whether the product is sustainable, whether it is recyclable, low impact on the environment, whether it is renewable, acceptable, safe, then whether does it meet the legislation, what is the source of energy. I think again there we need a separate talk on this, the sustainability in chemistry. I think I will not talk about this recycling, but there are several options. Let's go back. The message, we should definitely reduce the use of polymer. We should put them to reuse, and wherever possible, we should recycle. That's why these 4 R's are and recover. These are the very important message. Though like I said, 350 million tons of plastics are produced. Hardly 10% of the plastic is recycled as of today. Okay. Now then again talking about biodegradable polymers, but again like I said, it's not a panacea. It's not a solution to all the problems. Okay. So best option is to reduce, reuse and recycle options. And then environmentally degradable polymers. I think these are some of the technological solutions which we talked about. I think there are certain behavioral problems also with us. Again, we cannot only put all the blame on the plastics, but I think we also own the responsibility, like how we deal with these plastics. Okay, and I think the message again I want to convey to the young student here is, I think this question we need to ask ourselves: are we misusing scientific and technological breakthroughs to indiscreetly and greedily exploiting natural resources, thereby causing imbalance that make it difficult to maintain natural harmony? I think we all need to sit back and do some retrospection and find out whether are we misusing this. Okay, and I think scientists and technologists have this responsibility. The scientists, educators, and social workers have an obligation to impart both ethics and knowledge through their teaching. Okay, and especially when you are particularly teaching chemistry in any other way is like teaching someone to use a gun without telling him what the responsibility is. Okay, so I think it's important that we should make the decisions or choices in an unbiased and educated manner. Okay, that's why chemistry, whatever we do in the future, will be with goals of responsible care. Okay, or our commitment to sustainability. Next, we need to, I think, rethink our consumption patterns, changing our lifestyle and value system. Okay, so I think Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. And that's what our father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi, said. Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. then you must be the change you wish to see in the world. I think it has to start from us. Okay, then only you can preach to the others. And then, of course, the question is, like what Sundarlal Bhoguna said, you have to decide whether development means affluence or whether development means peace, prosperity, and happiness. And as you know, the world is not only for human beings, but the world is a place for animals and even for viruses. And we have seen the outbreak of this coronavirus. What happens, if there is an imbalance? Okay. So I think the message is loud and clear. We have to live in harmony, with the nature and not against the nature. With the nature, but not against the nature. I think that's the important message which has come in the forefront, with this COVID-19 pandemic. So I think in this effort, we all need to work as a team. Okay. And we have to make sure, in the words of Robert Baden-Powell, who is the founder of NCC, leave this world a little better than you found it, Next. I would have talked a lot about it. Let me, Vijay, do I have some another 10 minutes time? Vijay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let me talk about what we are doing in the lab. Like I tell giving advice is easy, but what is that? I mean, we are trying to do in our laboratory. Okay. And we are dealing with, these are the kind of polymers. Again, it needs a separate lecture. But I just want to tell you, these are all high performance, high temperature polymers, aromatic step growth polymers like Kevlar, Kapton, polyester, polyethyl ketone. They are used in lots of application. But one of the problem with these polymers, they cannot be processed easily. Okay. These are some of the macromolecular principles which chemists use. But I think I'll skip this. No, actually, basically what we are trying to do in our laboratory for the past decade or so is to make use of a agricultural waste product. And specifically I'm going to talk to you about two such examples. One is the cashew nut shell liquid. This is India specific because India is the third largest producer of cashew nut shell oil. I'm sure all of everybody likes to the taste of the fruit, but there is also an oil which is produced. Nature produces it to protect the fruit from antibacterial attack, bacterial attack, etc. Again, I will not get into all that, biogenesis or extraction processes, but the message, is like cashew nut shell oil is abundantly available. It's an agricultural waste product, economical and industrially viable product. Its cost is hardly, 25 to 30 rupees a kilogram. In availability in India, like I said, is the third largest producer. But the irony of situation is, in India, we produce raw cashew nut shell oil in Bangalore region or Goa region, and we export it to America. And then the companies there, they refine this oil and make some products. Okay, though it is produced in India, like I told you, India is the largest producer of castor oil, but we don't process it here. The farmers don't. I mean, it's not. They just sell it. Castor oil, and those big companies, abroad, they buy these chemicals, process them, and make those polymers, and we buy those finished products of polymers from them. So what we decided is to venture into a program on the valorization of cashew nut shell oil to make some useful monomers. Again, in tune with one of those principles of green chemistry. Like the seventh principle I showed you was the use of renewable resource materials, which are agricultural waste product. And of course, again, this is a chemistry, like these are the various compounds which are present in cashew nut shell oil. I will not get into that. But from chemist perspective, what is more important is it has got these three reactive sites which are shown in arrow, on the left hand side, the hydroxyl group, the aromatic ring, and the double bonds in the side chain. Okay. Next. You see what my students have been able to do. We have prepared a range of useful monomers. Again, using very simple organic chemistry. It's a textbook organic reactions, what you have studied in undergraduate college. Simple alkylation, nitration, reduction, all those kind of reactions. Next, and I will rush through these slides, but my students have been able to produce. Next. Yeah, you can see here, this is a busy slide. 6 of my PhD students have worked on this topic on the valorization of cashew nut shell oil, and whatever polymer chemist can ask for in terms of both addition monomers and the condensation or step growth monomers. We have made those type of molecules, And what is that our strength here is the basic knowledge of organic chemistry or that creativity. And that's what I wanted to convey to students, You can choose the problems, research problem, based on whatever resources are available at your disposal. Okay. And then using these simple organic reactions, we have created for the first time, a series of difunctional monomer. Again, each of these monomer, there is a history. I will not again get into that. But what I want to tell you that, this is the first time, it has been demonstrated that starting from a single chemical, which is an agricultural waste product, you can do value addition using organic chemistry, knowledge of organic chemistry, and make a range of useful monomers. Okay. Now, this has been proved to be a very fertile area of research for us, because we have published more than 25 papers, several patents. We were invited to write a book chapter, and 6 students have obtained their, PhD degree working on this, problem. And then again, these are not yet another monomers, but these are the monomers, specialty monomers, which impart some special properties to the polymers. And we have been able to address, some of the issues with those high performance polymer using the monomers derived from cashew nut shell oil. And this is a book recently published on cashew nut shell liquid, the gold field for functional materials. We have contributed a chapter, and if some of you are interested, I can share this book with you. And then another raw material which we have looked into is the lignin. I told you lignin is the second largest, carbon source on this earth. And lignin is a byproduct of agricultural waste, the paper industry. And of course, lignin is a complex molecule, but it contains these kind of chemicals which are shown in the circle on the right hand side. And those are encircled red are the chemicals which we have made use of for making difunctional monomers. This is a work of a student of mine, Dr. Sachin Kuire, who is now with Asian Paints. He reacted these 2 simple chemicals. Okay? I told you earlier, like bisphenols are very important monomers for polymer chemistry. He had made this bisphenol starting from perpyrrolidide and syringol and guaiacol. Okay, in a one-step reaction, reaction carried out in aqueous NaOH. So it meets most of the principles of green chemistry. No hazardous chemicals, water as the reaction medium, 100 degrees centigrade, 8 hours, you get 50 to 80% yield of the bisphenol in a single step, solvent-free. And it, of course, organic chemist will definitely appreciate that. This bisphenol has got a pendant pyrrole group which can take part in various chemical reactions. Okay. Next. Then we have made also again these bisphenols in simple organic reactions, then diisocyanates, bio-based starting materials, simple reactions. You can see we have made polyurethanes, polyamides, polyether ketones. Then we have demonstrated recycling also. These are, some, I think 16 monomers Sachin made, starting from these lignin-derived aromatics. What is again needed here is the knowledge of organic chemistry, which all these reactions can be done in undergraduate laboratory. It's like either etherification, esterification, agitation, decomposition. Those are the kind of reactions, hydrogen hydrate reaction. We have made very interesting class of monomers. Okay. So in summary, I would like to now end by, saying that polymers are an indispensable part of modern life and are the most important class of materials today. I hope I was able to convince you, because wide array of industries are made possible by use of polymeric materials, and new polymeric materials and new processes for polymers will play crucial roles in solving the global challenges. Like I told you, this sustainable development goals. Okay, so the field of polymer science is wide open and very promising. And of course, modern polymer science and engineering is about creating new polymers and using sophisticated science tools to coax polymers to form structures that give you desired properties. Okay, and of course, like Dr. Nanasaheb Thorat was saying, polymer material science is the most interdisciplinary field, and that's what I liked about this symposium, wherein physics department and chemistry department, they have come together. Okay, because most of the problems can be solved in an interdisciplinary manner. Okay, so polymers materials, of course, need inputs from physicists, chemists, and biologists. Okay, and there are many opportunities for the young talented chemist. I will not go into this, maybe on some other occasion. With this, I would like to end and also like to acknowledge the contributions of several of my colleagues and students who did all this hard work. It's easy for me to make a presentation, but there is a lot of hard work goes into making those monomers in the pure form, make the polymers, do structure property relationship, and develop application. So I'm thankful to all these young students who made this possible. Okay. So with this, I would like to end and thank you, all of you, for your patience here listening. And thank you, Vijay and his colleague, for giving me this opportunity. And I am open to questions.
Thank you, sir. Actually, it's very important to talk. Many time I have listened you, not only in lecture, but also face to face, but I am getting more and more knowledge in polymer, especially. More than 250 participants are beneficiary today's talk, and also it's live on YouTube, so more than 600 maybe are beneficiary to today's lecture. So this session is open for question. If you have any question, please ask. Questions from audience.
Sorry, I had to rush, but I think, I had to so many things to talk about, so I rushed through. Okay, the presentation. That's why, Vijay, I was telling you, I would have come there and interacted, leisurely with the participant. But I think maybe on some other occasion.
You talk about that. Means physical appearance is always better than virtual, but unfortunately, from us it's not happened. So I'm really sorry about that. But
no, it's okay. Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. If you have question, yes. Wadgaonkar, sir, hello.
Yes.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Yes. Thank you very much. It was very nice lecture. And got new innovative research work. So particularly my interest as far as biodiesel is concerned. What could be the maximum limit of ethyl alcohol that should be blended?
I think voice is not clear. Can you write your question, in the chat box?
Yeah, surely.
That is better. No, I think.
Can I repeat?
You can put the question in the chat box. Then I will respond to that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, shortly, we'll write question on the chat box. Meanwhile, can I ask one question, sir?
Sure.
So, sir, you always favor to student, motivate always. And in this conference, we have more belongs from PG and UG level student.
Okay.
Please give your message to students for his future regarding the polymer chemistry research. Have more freedom to talk with student.
See, Vijay, I don't want to tell them that they should take up polymer science as a career, but I think, of course, career as a researcher is definitely, something which is fulfilling and satisfying, because you can contribute to the world knowledge. So far what they are been exposed to is to learn and understand what is already exists, in terms of the knowledge pool, because they are studying from the books and, from the teachers. But when you, join some, research laboratory or university as a researcher, they have an opportunity to contribute, something new and make a difference in the lives of so many people. Like I said, those 5 inventions, we all are grateful, to those inventors or discoverers who invented penicillin, polyethylene, because introduction of those materials has changed the world. Imagine what was the world before. Again, taking the example of Corona, and I think after Corona, science and technology has reached to the common man. Okay. See, imagine if there was no vaccine, what would happen today? So this is the power of what scientists and technologists have. Okay, they can change the world. They can bring in those comforts. I told you, like all these materials, what scientists have discovered, are in the process of discovering, bring in a lot of comfort and improve the quality of life. Okay, and I think there is no other way, or there is no other profession which is so fulfilling and so rewarding, other than scientists and technologists. This is what I believe. Okay, so my message to student is, those who, of course, who have aptitude, who have liking for research, should definitely be encouraged. But of course, this is not an easy path. There are so many challenges, and Vijay, you know it probably, right? What are the challenges to succeed in scientific career? It's definitely not for everyone. This is what message I wanted to convey to the young students. One can be ambitious, one can have aspiration, but it's definitely not for everyone, because scientific research needs outstanding qualities. And I will tell you on some other occasion, what are those qualities, and they can themselves, see whether they have those qualities. So it's not an easy path, okay, but of course it is very satisfying and fulfilling.
Thank you, sir. Sir, the question from our Vice Principal, Professor Dr. S.D. Jadhav, sir. I hope you read in chat box.
Okay, what is the maximum limit of ethyl alcohol that should be blended to prepare? No, I think this question is a little confusing. But I tell you what, biodiesel is a different thing. Okay, biodiesel, actually, it's from Jatropha. It's a fatty acid ester. And of course, I think probably the question is how much of ethyl alcohol can be put in the fuel.
Yes,
So
sir, yes.
these are all policy decisions. So I really don't know what is the maximum limit. By the way, again, I'm not an expert in that. But I think the government has put a limit of putting 10 to 20% of ethyl alcohol in the fuel. Okay. But by the way, the ethyl alcohol and biodiesel, these two are different things.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think no more question now. So thank you so much for on 11 hours the schedule was changed, and you appreciate again. It was thank you so much, and sorry for that.
Thank you everyone for patience listening, and thank you Vijay for the opportunity. And thank you to Principal V.S. Sawant sir also.
Thanks. Now the session is poster presentation. Please gather near the poster. We have the poster. Please stand in front of the poster. There are internal team, expert team will be visit your posters. And as we mentioned the rules, you have to hide your name. The committee already given the code to your poster. So please cooperate with him. So session will start for the poster presentation. Thank you.